Hey again, different episode this time. My name is Zach Perry. I am a fan of Star Wars, and I have conversations with people. Anyone who watches The Mandalorian likes it. I mean, there were a couple episodes, exactly two actually, in the first season that were a little rough. Second season's been awesome, but there's one thing that I really, really love about what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are doing with the show, is they are taking pieces of Star Wars lore that have always been part of the backdrop, and they are creating backstories, or they're making pieces of this more central. And so I just want to talk about a couple of those. If you'll remember that scene in The Empire Strikes Back, the famous, well, everything in that movie is famous, but if you can picture on the deck of the Star Destroyer when Darth Vader is hiring bounty hunters because he's trying to track down Han Solo, he wants to find Luke. He hires these bounty hunters, and there's a scene where they're all on the deck, and he's talking, to them about the bounty, and he basically says he wants them alive, and then he turns to Boba Fett, and he says, "No disintegrations," right? So you can picture all these bounty hunters. I don't even think any of them say anything. I don't know if they do. It's probably Boba Fett. It's probably one line, but I don't think they say anything. And so this line, "no disintegrations," has just been a line. It's never really meant anything. Because never in any movie do we have Boba Fett, or any other bounty hunter for that matter, disintegrating anything. In fact, the closest we come to disintegrations is when we have the Death Star, when they're using that super laser, and the whole planet explodes, right? And so then in one of the first episodes, it might have been the second episode of season 1, you have Mando pulling out his 63-inch rifle when the Jawas have disassembled his ship and are taking it with them, and he starts firing at a couple Jawas, and what happens when they get hit? They disintegrate. So I thought that was just a great kind of tribute to, apparently there's some link between disintegrating rifles and Mandalorians, because we were able to tie Darth Vader's knowledge that Boba Fett had the capability of disintegrating, which apparently no one else has with a hand weapon. Even Chewbacca's bowcaster, which we see how powerful it is in The Force Awakens, it apparently carries some mass with the blaster bolt, because when it hits stormtroopers they fly, and Han Solo has this funny line where he shoots it and he's like, "I like this." But no one else can disintegrate, but apparently Mandalorians can, and we get to see that in the first season of The Mandalorian. I thought that was great. Another part from that scene, there are a bunch of different bounty hunters. Bosk is there, and IG-88 is there, and there are a bunch of these bounty hunters, we wouldn't even know their names, except they had action figures with names, and they became part of the expanded universe of the books. But one thing I really like is in the very first episode, and then not so much in later episodes, but IG-11 is in there. But in the first episode, we see this assassin droid, this bounty hunter droid, this model droid, the IG series, right at the standoff at the beginning where they're both competing for the same bounty for the child. And so we see just how awesome. So we have this cool looking droid in The Empire Strikes Back that we never see the droid do anything or say anything. And so it was basically just an object of form. They created this cool looking thing, and then The Mandalorian added function to all this. And so we get to see the swiveling head and the arms moving and the firing in all directions at once. And it was just a really cool montage when we see IG-11 for the first time at the end of episode 1, season 1, and we get to see, wow, that is really cool. So I loved that. Another thing I want to point out, this is in season 2, one of the first episodes of season 2, the protagonist, or the challenge they have to overcome, is killing a crate dragon, right? Now a crate dragon has reference in expanded universe and whatnot, but the first time is in the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, in 1977. There are a couple hints at the crate dragon. Number one is when the droids first get out of their escape pod, C-3PO and R2-D2 are walking through the desert, and we see this huge skeleton. It's a spine and a rib cage, and maybe a skull, I don't remember. We see this huge, dinosaur-sized skeleton, and that's a crate dragon, okay? And then later in the episode, after R2 steals away to go meet Obi-Wan to deliver this message, and Luke is chasing him down in his speeder with 3PO, they get attacked by the Tusken Raiders. And the Tusken Raiders get scared away by what? Obi-Wan, right? He makes this howling or growling sound, the shrieking sound maybe, and they go away, and Luke asked Obi-Wan about it, and he says, he basically is imitating the sound of a crate dragon. I don't remember the exact phraseology, but he says something like, it's a natural enemy or natural predator of the Sand People. And so that's all we know about the crate dragon. We know there's this huge skeleton, and we know Obi-Wan uses the sound of a crate dragon to scare away Tusken Raiders because they're natural enemies. But that's it. It's just backdrop, right? It just adds to the texture of Star Wars. And then we get this whole backstory where we get to see a crate dragon. We already knew, what they sounded like. We already knew they were enemies with the Tusken Raiders. We already could imagine their immense size because of the skeleton. Now we get to see the relationship between the Tusken Raiders and the crate dragon. We get to hear it for real again. We get to see it, and they it's kind of reminiscent of like a sandworm from Beetlejuice or from Breath of the Wild or from Dune. There are a bunch of different fantasy type movies or shows where they show something that can travel through the sound or through the sand. But what I really liked about this is they're getting up on this rock mountain to be protected from the crate dragon, and the crate dragon just swims through the rocks. I mean, it's just like cool. Anyway, so one thing that I really appreciate, and if you like me, if you've seen the original movies so many times, you'll pick up on these little things that you're just like, oh, that's so cool, right? And another thing that's really cool is how they tie it into the animated series and the prequels, and they kind of put all of this together. Casting Tamura Morrison as Boba Fett was just cool, right? And he's scarred, and so we've got he played Jango Fett. He was the basis of all the clones in the prequels. Boba Fett was adopted by Jango essentially, and he didn't have accelerated growth, so he would grow up to look the same as everyone else. And now he's grown up and he's scarred because he had to escape the Sarlacc, and so just very cool tie into everything. Then of course we have the last season of Clone Wars, which came out in 2020, and we kind of tie in Bo-Katan and the Darksaber with Ahsoka Tano, and then in just what I think is really cool move, they used the actress who voiced Bo-Katan in the animated series in various seasons, the one from Stargate, and she was in 24, and her name is escaping me right now. Katie Sackhoff, that's right. So Katie Sackhoff voiced Bo-Katan, and then they actually cast her to play the live-action Bo-Katan, and which I just think was a really cool move. And so they created her costume and gave her the short red hair with the headband, and anyway, very cool move. Ties that in. So Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan in the last season of the Clone Wars kind of formed a bit of an alliance, and then that ties into Mandalorian, which was several years later in the timeline, where Mandalorian's looking for other Mandalorians. He finds them on that water planet, whose name I don't remember, and then Bo-Katan tells him where to find Ahsoka Tano. So kind of cool tie in there. I also like, because at first I thought, are they riding themselves into a corner? When the entire first season, we have this group of Mandalorians who refuses to take their helmets off, and that's just part of their creed. And in fact, one of the questions before the blacksmith Mandalorian, I don't remember her name, before she'll make the Mandalorian armor, and there's this kind of interrogation where the other Mandalorians are questioning his faith, I guess, and they ask if he's ever taken his mask off or if it's ever been taken off. And then, of course, we have that dramatic scene in the last episode of season 1 where he's injured and IG-11 is offering to help him, and he says, no one can see my face, and IG-11 says, oh, I'm not alive, and so he allows the help. Anyway, so I thought, are they backing themselves in the corner where the Mandalorians somehow they don't take their masks off? Because that was not the case in the Clone Wars. They were always taking their masks off. And so I really like how they tied that in, and Bo-Katan and her people were taking their masks off, and he thought, oh my gosh, you aren't real Mandalorians. And then we kind of see that he's part of this like offshoot sect or something like that. And so there's an interesting backstory there. Anyway, so The creators are just doing a really, really cool job. I'm excited about what they're doing. I haven't seen the last episode of season 2 yet because it's airing today. But hopefully you guys have noticed similar things like that. You can leave comments if you notice other stuff. I know there's a ton more. These are just some off the top of my head. I really appreciate what the creators are doing. I love that Disney announced kind of 2 other series, the Ahsoka Tano spinoff, and then the other one that take place in the kind of the same universe. And I'm sure there's going to be crossovers and stuff. Not the same universe, but the same timeline, the same time as the Mandalorian, and it's the same creative team behind it. So it's just going to be really cool, something to be excited about. Anyway, if you do want to shoot the bull about Star Wars or the Mandalorian, or you want to discuss theories, hey, I'm here. But more importantly, if you want to talk money with someone who knows money, but who's also kind of a nerd, then give us a call. And we guarantee that whoever answers the phone will put a smile on your face. If they don't, you're going to let me hear about it. And I want to know that because we take smiling very seriously around here.